I stood there in my wedding dress, my face still stinging from my sister's slap, staring at the man I was supposed to marry. He looked at me, not with concern, but with cold irritation, and delivered an ultimatum that shattered my world. Apologize to my mother or leave the wedding. So I left. It all started weeks earlier with such joy. The crystal chandelier cast a warm glow across the dining table, where my entire family had gathered for what I truly believed would be a joyous celebration. I'd rehearsed my announcement in my head countless times, meticulously choosing every word during the drive to my parents' house. My fiancé Derek and I had received the most incredible news from his parents just 3 days prior, and I was bursting to share our happiness. I have something exciting to tell you all, I said, setting down my wine glass. The room quieted, conversations fading as every face turned towards me, expectant and smiling. Derek and I have set a wedding date for June 15th. And his parents, they've offered to fund the entire celebration. Not only that, but as a wedding gift, they're giving us ownership of a boutique resort in the Bahamas. And after the ceremony, they've arranged a 3-month world tour for us. My mother gasped, hands flying to her chest in pure delight. My father stood, eyes crinkling with genuine happiness, to embrace me. My aunt immediately launched into questions about the dress, the venue, the guest list. The intoxicating excitement in the air felt like a validation of all the careful planning and dreaming. Then I saw her. Vanessa. My older sister sat frozen at the far end of the table, her fork suspended midway to her mouth. Her husband, Greg, reached to touch her arm, but she recoiled sharply. The color had drained from her face, replaced by a tight, angry flush that crept up her neck and settled in her cheeks. That's wonderful news, sweetheart, my mother said, completely oblivious to the storm brewing across from her. Derek's parents are so generous. You're very fortunate. Vanessa's chair scraped backward with a harsh, screeching sound that instantly silenced the table. She stood abruptly, her napkin fluttering to the floor. Fortunate. The word wasn't spoken, it was spat out like acid. Let's see how you get married if I don't get anything, so you don't either. The dining room went silent. Even the grandfather clock in the hallway seemed to stop ticking. Vanessa, what are you talking about? I asked, genuinely bewildered by her outburst. We'd always maintained a cordial relationship, though never particularly close. She was 4 years older, married to a financial advisor, and mother to 2 kids who were currently upstairs watching TV. She laughed then, a brittle, humorless sound. You waltz in here with your perfect engagement, your rich in-laws, your free resort and world trip. Meanwhile, what did I get when I married Greg? A backyard wedding with folding chairs and a cake from Costco. But sure, we should all just celebrate you. That was your choice, I said, my voice deliberately level despite the confusion swirling through me. You and Greg said you wanted something small and intimate. Because we couldn't afford anything else. Vanessa's voice rose to a near shout. Because Mom and Dad had just paid for your college tuition, and couldn't contribute much to our wedding. But nobody seems to remember that sacrifice, do they? My father cleared his throat. A low warning sound I remembered from childhood. Vanessa, that's enough. Your sister deserves to be happy about her engagement without this negativity. She's just joking. My mother interjected quickly, her eyes darting nervously between us. Don't take it seriously. She's had a long week with the kids being sick and everything. You know how stress affects people. But Vanessa wasn't joking. I could see the genuine resentment burning in her eyes, a bitterness I hadn't realized she'd been harboring for years. She snatched her purse from the side table and turned to leave. Congratulations on your fairy tale wedding, she called over her shoulder. I hope it's everything you've ever dreamed of, though I wouldn't count on it. The threat hung in the air long after she slammed the front door. Greg mumbled apologies before hurrying after her, leaving the rest of us in an uncomfortable, joyless silence. My aunt tried to restart the conversation about wedding plans, but the excitement had been sucked from the room like air from a punctured balloon. I should have recognized that moment for what it was. A warning shot fired across the bow. Instead, I convinced myself that Vanessa would calm down. That time would smooth over whatever jealousy had erupted that night. I dove headfirst into wedding preparations, focusing on choosing flowers, finalizing the guest list, and the 1,000 other details for a 300-person ceremony. Derek's parents, Margaret and Charles, had been nothing but supportive. They owned a chain of luxury hotels and had always treated me like a daughter. The resort they were gifting us was a smaller, exclusive property on a private island, a dream. The world tour would take us through Europe, Asia, and South America over 12 weeks. It was all so perfect. My parents seemed genuinely thrilled, though I did notice my mother making extra efforts to include Vanessa in wedding discussions, calling her for opinions on color schemes, trying to bridge the gap between us. Vanessa, predictably, responded with curt, minimal answers before finding excuses to end the conversations. 3 weeks before the wedding, I received a text from her. Asterisk, just so you know, I'm still coming. Wouldn't miss it for the world. The message felt ominous, not reassuring, but Derek convinced me I was reading too much into it. Family tensions before weddings are normal, he assured me. Everything will be fine on the day. The morning of June 15th dawned clear and beautiful, perfect weather for an outdoor ceremony. The venue was a historic estate with manicured gardens and a distant ocean view. Derek's parents had spared no expense. The decorations, catering, and entertainment all looked like something straight out of a luxury magazine spread. I spent the morning in the bridal suite with my bridesmaids, getting hair and makeup done, sipping champagne, and laughing at old stories. My dress was a custom creation of ivory silk and French lace, fitted perfectly after 3 rounds of alterations. When I looked in the full-length mirror, I barely recognized the elegant woman staring back. An hour before the ceremony, I went to the main hall to check on the seating arrangements. The space had been transformed into something magical, with thousands of white roses and hanging crystals that caught the afternoon light. 300 white chairs were arranged in perfect rows, each with a ribbon and a small card indicating assigned seats. The emotion of the day was overwhelming, and my feet already ached from the heels I'd been wearing for hours. I just needed to sit down for a moment. Mindful of not crushing my dress, I lowered myself carefully into one of the chairs near the front and closed my eyes, trying to center myself. The slap came out of nowhere. One moment I was sitting peacefully. The next, my head snapped sideways from the brutal force of a hand connecting with my cheek. The sound echoed through the hall like a gunshot. My eyes flew open to see Vanessa standing over me, her face twisted with rage and something else. Satisfaction, maybe, or vindication. "How embarrassing, not giving your chair to Derek's mother," she announced loudly, her voice carrying to every corner of the hall. Guests were already beginning to file in, and they stopped dead in their tracks at the scene unfolding before them. "I wonder how they'll handle a disgusting woman like you." My hand flew to my burning cheek as I stared up at her in utter shock. Through the ringing in my ears, I heard gasps from the gathering crowd. Someone dropped a champagne glass, and it shattered on the marble floor. Margaret, Derek's mother, appeared beside Vanessa, her face hardening into an expression I'd never seen before. The warm, welcoming woman who had embraced me into her family seemed to vanish, replaced by someone cold and judgmental. She looked down at me with narrowed eyes, her mouth pressed into a thin line. "I think we got a gold digger here," she said, her voice dripping with disdain. "Someone who doesn't even have the basic manners to offer her seat to family." My mind couldn't process what was happening. I tried to speak, to explain that I had simply needed to sit for a moment, that I hadn't even seen Margaret approaching, but my throat had closed up with shock and humiliation. Then Derek pushed through the crowd. My fiancé, the man I was supposed to marry in less than an hour, looked at me with an expression that made my blood run cold. There was no concern, no confusion about why his sister-in-law had just assaulted his bride. Just irritation and something that might have been embarrassment. "Well," he said flatly, gesturing toward his mother, "stand up and apologize to her or leave the wedding." The words hit me harder than Vanessa's slap. I sat there in my beautiful dress, my cheek throbbing, staring at this man I thought I knew. The crowd had swelled to at least 100 people now, all watching this scene unfold like some kind of reality TV drama. My bridesmaids had rushed in from the preparation room, their faces etched with various expressions of shock and confusion. "Leave the wedding." The words echoed in my mind. I stood up slowly, carefully arranging my dress around me. My hands weren't shaking yet, though I knew they would later. Some part of my brain had gone very quiet and very calm, the way it does in true emergencies when panic would be counterproductive. "You're absolutely right," I said to Derek, my voice steady despite the chaos around us. "I should leave the wedding." I walked past him without another word, my head held high despite the burning humiliation. My bridesmaids tried to stop me, asking questions, offering to help, but I kept moving through the decorated hall, past the shocked guests, and out the main entrance where limousines were still arriving. The driver who had brought me to the venue that morning was standing by his car, checking his phone. He looked up in surprise as I approached, his eyes widening at the sight of a bride leaving her own wedding. "Could you please take me home?" I asked politely. "Ma'am is everything. Just take me home, please." The drive back to my apartment felt surreal, like something happening to someone else. I sat in the back of the luxury car in my wedding dress, watching the city pass by through tinted windows. My phone started buzzing in the small clutch I'd been carrying, but I ignored it. Back at my apartment, I finally looked at myself in the mirror. A red handprint was visible on my left cheek, already beginning to bruise. My carefully applied makeup was smudged from tears I didn't remember crying. I looked like a ghost of the happy bride I'd been just an hour earlier. I peeled off the wedding dress with shaking hands, each hook and button feeling like it took an eternity to unfasten. The fabric that had felt so light and perfect that morning now seemed suffocating. I left it in a heap on the bathroom floor and stood under the shower for what must have been 40 minutes. letting scalding water wash away the feeling of 300 eyes staring at me. My best friend Cassidy started calling around 4 o'clock. I let it ring through to voicemail twice before finally answering on the third attempt. "Oh, thank God," she breathed into the phone. "I've been losing my mind. What happened? One minute we were adjusting your veil, and the next you were gone, and everyone's running around like chickens with their heads cut off." I explained everything while wrapped in my bathrobe, my wet hair dripping onto the carpet. The chair, Vanessa's slap, Margaret's accusation, Derek's ultimatum. Saying it out loud made it feel even more surreal, like I was describing a scene from a movie, rather than something that had actually happened to me. "He told you to leave?" Cassidy's voice went up an octave. "Your fiancé told you to leave your own wedding or apologize to his mother for something you didn't even intentionally do. Jesus Christ." I heard her moving around, probably pacing the way she always did when agitated. "Okay, first of all, you're a goddamn hero for walking out. Second, I'm coming over right now with wine and Chinese food. Third, Derek Thompson is officially dead to me. You don't have to. I'm already in my car. Be there in 20 minutes. Don't argue." True to her word, Cassidy showed up with enough takeout to feed a small army and 3 bottles of wine. We sat on my living room floor, eating lo mein straight from the containers while she told me about the chaos that erupted after my departure. "Margaret was trying to convince people you'd had some kind of mental breakdown," Cassidy said, shaking her head. "She kept saying you'd been under so much stress with the planning that you weren't yourself. But here's the thing. At least 50 people saw the whole thing happen. They saw Vanessa hit you. They heard what Margaret said. So when she tried to spin it, people weren't buying it. What about Derek?" He looked like a deer in headlights, just stood there while his mother made announcements about continuing with the reception since everything was already paid for. Some people left immediately. Others stayed, but you could tell they felt uncomfortable, like they were watching a wake instead of celebrating. The phone call started around 6 o'clock, right when the reception would have been in full swing. Derek mostly calling over and over again. Then text messages flooded in. "Asterisk, where are you? This is ridiculous. Come back. My parents are furious. Everyone is asking questions. You're ruining everything. Please just call me back." Asterisk, I turned off my phone and ran a bath, soaking in scalding water until my skin turned pink. The wedding dress lay in a pile on my bedroom floor. A $3,000 puddle of ruined dreams and broken promises. Over the next 3 days, I let the calls go to voicemail. I listened to each one, hearing Derek's tone shift from angry to confused to genuinely panicked. His parents had apparently decided to continue with the reception despite the missing bride, spinning some story about a medical emergency, but word had spread quickly about what actually happened. Probably thanks to social media and those 300 witnesses. On day 4, I finally called Derek back. "Thank God," he said immediately. "We need to talk about what happened. This whole thing got blown completely out of proportion." "Did it?" I kept my voice neutral, surprisingly steady. "Your mother called me a gold digger. You told me to apologize or leave. And my sister assaulted me in front of hundreds of people. Which part was out of proportion?" "Vanessa was out of line, yes, but you have to understand how it looked. You were sitting in my mother's designated seat. She had just walked in and saw you there." And Vanessa jumped to her defense. "It was all a misunderstanding. The chairs weren't marked." "Yes, they were. There were cards on each one." I closed my eyes, remembering. There had been cards, small cream rectangles with names written in calligraphy. But I'd been so overwhelmed with emotion that I hadn't checked which chair I was lowering myself into. A wave of doubt washed over me. Had I inadvertently taken Margaret's seat? Then I remembered the look on Vanessa's face. The satisfaction, the planning behind her eyes. "Derek, even if I did accidentally sit in your mother's seat, that doesn't excuse what happened. Your sister-in-law physically struck me. Your mother immediately accused me of being a gold digger without asking for my side of the story. And you, my fiancé, told me to leave rather than defending me. You were trying to de-escalate the situation by siding with them against me." Silence stretched between us. I could hear him breathing, searching for the right words, the perfect argument that would make me understand his perspective. "Look, I know how this looks," Derek continued, his voice taking on a pleading quality I'd never heard before. "But you have to understand the position I was in. My mother was humiliated in front of all her friends. Vanessa was clearly having some kind of episode. I thought if I could just get you to smooth things over quickly, we could move past it and still have the ceremony." "Smooth things over," I repeated slowly. "Your sister-in-law assaulted me, Derek. Your mother called me a gold digger, and you wanted me to smooth things over. The seat had her name on it. You were sitting in her designated chair. Can't you see how that looked to everyone?" Something in his tone triggered a memory. The way Vanessa had appeared so quickly after I sat down, almost like she'd been watching and waiting. The triumphant look on her face before she struck me. The fact that she'd known exactly what to say to make Margaret turn against me instantly. Derek, where was I supposed to sit during the ceremony? What? You were supposed to be in the bridal suite until it was time to walk down the aisle, right? So, I wouldn't have been in the guest seating area at all before the ceremony started. Which means the only way I could have taken your mother's seat was if someone guided me there. Or if I wandered, not realizing these were guest chairs with assigned seating. He went quiet. That's ridiculous. You're being paranoid. Am I? Vanessa threatened me at the family dinner. Derek, she said I wouldn't get to be married if she didn't get anything. Everyone heard it. And then at my wedding, she just happens to catch me sitting in your mother's seat, and uses it as an excuse to assault me in front of hundreds of people. You don't find that suspicious? Vanessa wouldn't, she's not like that. You barely know my sister. You've met her maybe 5 times. But you're willing to take her side over mine. My parents have invested a lot of money in this wedding, he finally said. The resort, the trip, everything. They felt disrespected. There it was. The real issue bubbling up from underneath everything else. His parents' money, their generosity, had become a chain around my neck. I was supposed to be grateful, compliant, understanding. I was supposed to accept whatever treatment came my way because of their financial contributions to our future. Tell your parents thank you for their generosity, but I won't be needing the resort or the world trip anymore. Don't be ridiculous. You're upset, I get it, but let's not make rash decisions. We can reschedule the wedding, have a smaller ceremony, work through this as a couple. Derek, you told me to leave my own wedding. I was trying to. I don't care what you were trying to do. You had a choice in that moment between supporting me and supporting your mother's false accusation. You chose your mother. That tells me everything I need to know about what our marriage would have looked like. I ended the call before he could respond and blocked his number. Then I called my attorney, a sharp woman named Patricia Mills, who had handled some contract work for me in the past. I need advice on extricating myself from this entire situation and protecting myself legally, I told her. 3 hours later I sat in her office downtown, explaining everything that had happened. She listened carefully, taking notes, occasionally asking clarifying questions. When I finished, she sat back in her chair and tapped her pen against her legal pad. First thing we need to establish is whether any contracts were signed regarding the resort or the trip, she said. If Derek's parents made those gifts contingent on the marriage actually occurring, they might have legal grounds to reclaim them. But since you never received those gifts, that's a non-issue. What about the wedding expenses they paid for? Did they explicitly state the money was a loan? I shook my head. Everything was presented as a gift, as a contribution to our wedding. Then legally they have no recourse to demand repayment, especially since you didn't cancel the wedding out of malice or frivolity. You were assaulted and verbally abused. Any reasonable person would have left under those circumstances. Patricia helped me draft a formal statement explaining my side of events, which we sent to Derek, his parents, and my own family. The statement outlined exactly what had occurred, including Vanessa's assault and Derek's ultimatum. I also filed a police report about the slap, creating an official record of the incident. The next morning, I woke up to my phone exploding with notifications. Apparently, someone from the wedding had posted about the incident on social media, and it had gone viral. Not just locally but nationally. People were dissecting every aspect of the story, debating who was at fault, sharing their own wedding horror stories in the comments. My work inbox was flooded with messages from colleagues expressing support. My boss, Mr. Henderson, called me personally to say I could take as much time as I needed, but that the company stood behind me completely. Several news outlets requested interviews, which I declined through Patricia's office. This public attention did something I hadn't expected. It forced people to choose sides very clearly. Derek's parents could no longer control the narrative or spin the story to their advantage. Too many witnesses had come forward with detailed accounts of what actually happened. One video in particular went viral. Someone had been taking footage of the decorated venue before the ceremony, slowly panning across the flowers and details, when they accidentally captured audio of Vanessa and my mother talking near the entrance about 15 minutes before the slap. The quality wasn't great, but you could clearly hear Vanessa saying, "She's about to get everything handed to her on a silver platter. Someone needs to knock her down a peg." My mother's response was muffled, but Vanessa's next words were crystal clear. "Don't worry, I'll handle it." When that video surfaced, everything changed. My parents called immediately, both on speakerphone, my father's voice tight with anger. "Did you see what your sister said? She planned this. The whole thing was calculated." "I know, Dad," my mother added, her voice breaking. "When she said that to me, I thought she just meant she'd talk to you. Maybe try to clear the air before the ceremony. I never imagined she meant to physically." She couldn't finish the sentence. "We owe you an apology," my father said firmly. "We tried to downplay what happened to protect Vanessa because she's family. But what she did was inexcusable." There's no justification for it. The apology felt vindicating, but it also made me sad. My family had fractured over this. Relationships damaged in ways that might never fully heal. Vanessa's jealousy had poisoned everything it touched. Vanessa called that evening, her voice shaking with a mixture of anger and fear. You filed a police report against me. Are you insane? You struck me in front of 300 witnesses, I replied calmly. That's assault. I documented it with law enforcement. I barely touched you. You're blowing this whole thing out of proportion because you're embarrassed about ruining your own wedding. I have photos of a bruise on my face. I have witness statements. I have everything documented with the police and my attorney. The authorities will decide what happens next, but I'd suggest you stop calling me before you make things worse for yourself. She hung up. Within an hour, my mother called. Honey, don't you think you're being a bit harsh? Vanessa made a mistake, yes, but pressing charges? That seems excessive. Mom, she physically attacked me at my wedding. How is ensuring there are legal consequences for that action excessive? She's your sister. Family should forgive each other. Did she ever apologize? Silence answered me. That's what I thought, I continued. She hasn't apologized because she doesn't think she did anything wrong. She was jealous of my engagement. She made a threat at dinner and she followed through on that threat. This wasn't a momentary lapse in judgment. This was calculated. My mother made a small sound of protest, but I could hear doubt creeping into her voice. She had been there at the family dinner. She had seen Vanessa's reaction, heard her threat. And Dad, I asked, what does he think about all this? He's angry at Vanessa, my mother admitted. He said she crossed the line, but he also thinks you and Derek should try to work things out. He says every couple faces challenges, and running away at the first sign of trouble isn't the answer. The first sign of trouble? Mom, Derek chose his mother over me when it mattered most. What happens the next time there's a conflict? Or the time after that? How many times am I supposed to accept being treated as less important than keeping his parents happy? She didn't have an answer for that. Over the following weeks, the story spread beyond our immediate circle. Some of Derek's relatives reached out to me privately, expressing sympathy and admitting that Margaret could be difficult and controlling. They painted a picture of a woman who expected absolute deference, who used money as a tool to maintain power over her children. One cousin, Amanda, sent me a long email detailing how Margaret had ruined her own engagement years earlier by constantly criticizing her fiancé until he finally broke things off. She does this thing where she finds the person's weak point and just picks at it relentlessly, Amanda wrote. With my ex, it was his working-class background. She'd make these subtle comments about his manners, his education, his prospects. Nothing you could call her out on directly, but enough to slowly poison his confidence. He started believing he wasn't good enough for our family, that he could never measure up. Eventually, he decided she was right. Reading that message made me realize how close I'd come to a lifetime of that very treatment. Margaret had started small during our engagement, gentle suggestions about my wardrobe choices, recommendations for improvement in my career path, hints that I should consider different friends who were more appropriate for Derek's social circle. I dismissed it as her being traditionally minded, maybe a bit old-fashioned in her views. But it would have escalated. After the wedding, without the escape route of breaking an engagement, those suggestions would have become demands. The criticism would have intensified, and Derek, as he'd proven on our wedding day, wouldn't have defended me against it. I started therapy around this time, working through the trauma of the experience and the complicated feelings about my family. My therapist, Dr. Robertson, helped me understand that walking away wasn't running from a problem. It was recognizing a fundamental incompatibility in values. You valued partnership and mutual respect, she explained during one session. Derek valued family hierarchy and parental approval. Neither of those is inherently wrong, but they're incompatible in a marriage. You would have spent years trying to change him or suppress your own needs, and neither approach would have worked. Derek made one final attempt to reconcile about 2 months after the failed wedding. He showed up at my office building with flowers and a letter he'd written by hand. Just read it, he said, holding out the envelope. Please. I took it but didn't open it in front of him. Derek, I've moved on. You should too. I talked to my mother. She understands she was wrong about the gold digger comment. She's willing to apologize. 2 months later, after her son's engagement fell apart and the social embarrassment set in, I thought, that's not a sincere apology. That's damage control. I should have defended you, he said, the words finally coming out, almost a whisper. In that moment, I should have stood by you instead of telling you to leave. I know that now. I was shocked and confused and I made the wrong choice. Yes, you did. Can you forgive me? I thought about it, really considered the question. Could I forgive him? Maybe eventually, with enough time and distance. But forgiveness didn't mean reconciliation. It didn't mean pretending the incident never happened, or that it wouldn't happen again in different circumstances. I forgive you, I said finally, but I don't want to marry you. You showed me who you are when things get difficult, when there's conflict between me and your family. I can't build a life with someone who won't stand beside me when it matters. He left the flowers on the lobby desk and walked away. I never opened the letter. 6 months later, I heard through mutual acquaintances that Derek was dating someone new, a woman from a wealthy family that his parents approved of. They were apparently much happier with this choice of partner. Good for them, I thought, and meant it. Some people are better suited to marriages where family hierarchy and financial considerations take precedence over individual autonomy. My relationship with my parents improved slowly. They gradually came to understand why I couldn't just forgive and forget, why some boundaries need to be maintained even within families. My father apologized for calling me stubborn, acknowledging that standing up for myself wasn't the same as being prideful. Vanessa and I would probably never be close, but we managed to reach a polite détente. She completed her anger management program and seemed genuinely committed to addressing her issues with jealousy and comparison. We saw each other at family gatherings and could manage civil conversations, though the easy sister relationship we'd once had was permanently altered. The strangest part of the whole experience was how many people reached out to share similar stories. Friends, acquaintances, even strangers who heard about what happened through the social media grapevine. So many women had faced moments where they were expected to accept disrespect or abuse in the name of keeping peace, maintaining appearances, or preserving relationships. I wish I'd had your courage, one woman told me at a coffee shop. She'd heard the story from a mutual friend and approached me to express solidarity. I stayed in a marriage for 8 years where my husband's family treated me like garbage, because I thought that was what you were supposed to do. You just endure it. But watching you walk away from that wedding showed me it's okay to demand better treatment. Those conversations made the humiliation worthwhile in a strange way. If my experience helped even one other person recognize they deserved respect, then something positive had come from the disaster. I eventually started dating again, taking things slow and paying careful attention to how men interacted with their families. Did they allow their parents to dictate their choices? Did they defend their partners when conflicts arose? Those became essential questions, deal breakers that needed to be addressed early in any relationship. Now, a year after the wedding that never was, my life looks completely different than I'd imagined. I'm single, focused on my career, and surprisingly content. The boutique resort and world trip would have been lovely, sure, but they came with strings attached, invisible chains that would have bound me to people who didn't value me as an equal partner in their family. Sometimes I think about that moment when Derek told me to leave. How different my life would be if I'd swallowed that humiliation, married him anyway, and spent years trying to win over a mother-in-law who'd already decided I wasn't good enough. But then I look at that wedding dress still hanging in my closet, dry cleaned and preserved. It's no longer a symbol of a ruined dream, but a monument to the day I chose myself. It's a reminder that walking away from what doesn't serve you, even when it feels like everything is falling apart, is sometimes the bravest, most necessary act of self-love. I didn't get the resort or the world trip or the fairy tale wedding, but I gained something far more valuable. My dignity, my peace, and the unwavering knowledge that I am worth defending. Derek still calls occasionally, always late at night, always a little drunk based on the slur in his voice. I don't answer anymore. His panic after I left the wedding came from embarrassment and social consequences, not from genuine loss. He missed having a fiancé, missed the life we planned, but I don't think he ever truly understood what he'd lost when he failed to defend me. My mother asked me recently if I regretted any of it, if I wished I'd handled things differently. I regret trusting people who showed me exactly who they were, I told her. Vanessa threatened me and I dismissed it. Derek's mother tried to control every aspect of the wedding planning, and I accepted it as generosity rather than manipulation. The signs were all there. I just chose not to see them. But if you could go back, knowing everything you know now, would you still walk away? I didn't even have to think about it. Absolutely. Every single time. I've told you my story. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever faced a moment where you had to choose between keeping the peace and standing up for yourself, no matter the cost? Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. I'm really curious to know what you think.